Welcome to Grit and Grow with Megan and Sarah. Today's episode, Blocks and Barrier Files, Lack of Self-Awareness.
I find the beauty in commotion, swimming by the gale, miles away.
Welcome back to Grit and Grow with Megan and Sarah. Again, that's Grit and Grow with Megan and Sarah. And today, we're going to talk about something that is definitely something I see or I feel every day, and that's that lack of self-awareness. So lack of self-awareness, okay? Have you ever been surprised by someone's reaction to something you'd said or did, only to realize the way it was perceived because the way you put it out there was just, you didn't even realize that it was going to be that bad. I've had that happen. My husband is notorious for this. He's notorious for this. Self-awareness is the cornerstone of personal growth and effective relationships. Without it, we risk making mistakes, damaging connections. And I think that's something you're going through with one of your clients right now, and hindering our potential and not on your aspect, on hers. So what do you think about lack of self-awareness, Miss Sarah?
Lack of self-awareness shows up for me all the time. At the same time, when I've worked with counselors, they've told me, they're like, wow, you have a lot of really great self-awareness. And I can remember being very mad at them, being like, but it doesn't help me. Being aware that I have problems does not help me with my problems. So the lack of self-awareness thing is a really good, touchy one for me. And I actually have a really funny story because I do this. I don't think ahead to how my words are going to be perceived. I am not aware of how I can make people uncomfortable. So what was it? Back in June, my husband had foot surgery. We sat out in the waiting room. The nurse came out to get him. She kind of went over, how it's going to go, kind of like the whole day thing. She's like, okay, now you just wait here a moment. I'm going to take him back there and get him prepped. And I sat down. I'm like, okay, go get naked. And this poor very elderly scrub nurse, she was at least in her 60s. She got bright pink. She's like, oh, okay. And my poor husband just said, love you, honey. See you in a minute. I'm like, fuck. So lack of self-awareness has definitely, that was thankfully just an awkward, funny moment. But there's been a lot of times where it's not been funny. I've been straight accused of being on drugs because when I get anxious, I move my body. I move my body back and forth. I'll stretch. I'll fidget. People will straight up, it's not fun. It's not fun.
Well, and I said my husband is notorious for this one. He is a very good man, but he comes across at times like an asshole. To put it absolutely bluntly, he comes across like an asshole. And he'll be like, but I said, I'm like, babe, it's not exactly what you said. It's the inflection you put behind it. It's how you presented it that I just want to take a rolling pin to the back of your head right now. Like you just don't understand how you come across as so condescending. So we get into that argument a lot because he just has this voice and this way of saying things that are so, it's like, seriously, do you not understand I'm your wife? Like, I'm not your enemy, I'm your wife. And so, and he doesn't fully understand it. And I'm like, self-awareness issues right there. This is a definite self-awareness issue.
Yeah. Adam and I go back and forth on that because he's like, don't talk to me like that. And I'm like, talk to you like what? Like, I'm not even talking to you like anything. And so he and I have been got back and forth on whatever you're perceiving is not there. And so is it lack of self-awareness, or are we being responsible for how other people perceive us? Do we need to change how we're communicating to try to change the way people perceive us? Man, I have gone round and round in this with lots of other even business relationships. I can remember my very last day at Tillamook Vision Center getting very upset and crying and having crushed up tissues in my hand, and the doctor and the doctor's wife were sitting right in front of me, and I wanted to throw the trash in the trash, and I had been worked up, and so every time I leaned forward to put something in the trash, which was by the doctor's knee, I said, pardon me, I'm not trying to get you. I'm putting this in the trash, because I was worked up emotionally, and I certainly did not want to give any kind of indication that I'm coming at you quickly. I'm not leaning forward to be aggressive. I think I said it 4 times in the less than 20-minute interaction where I said, pardon me, I'm not trying to get you, just putting this in the trash.
Yeah.
Because I really care about how I'm perceived. And I know, because it's been brought to my attention before, that I come off as aggressive and harsh and rude and the B word. And I'm like, no, I'm just getting things done. I'm fine.
Well, and I think there's two aspects of it. So I'm going to read you the definition of self-awareness. So self-awareness is the ability to understand your thoughts, emotions, motivations, and behaviors. It's about knowing yourself on a deeper level. So that's the definition of what self-awareness is. But I think there's two aspects of this. Like, and that's where, you know, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, because I tend to be very blunt, and I tend to tell you exactly what I think. The good news behind that is you always know where you stand with me. The bad news behind that is that people don't always like the way it comes across. And I basically say, look, I don't beat around the bushes. I tell you what it is, but I also will admit when I'm wrong. So you got both aspects of my honesty. But with my husband, a lot of it, I think, is there's some of it that might be me, that I might be reading too much into what he's saying. But there's also that aspect of he doesn't read a room. So like when you're talking to someone, there are cues. If you're really in touch with yourself, you can see their cues as well. And you can understand what I just said kind of upset them. Let me back up and say, let me back up and explain that's not how I didn't mean it in any way. You know, there are ways. He doesn't acknowledge the room. He just says what he wants to say, and that's the end of it. And it's like, okay, this is lack of self-awareness at this point. But, you know, and some of it might be me as well, you know, but for the most part, it's, oh, we're usually on good terms. It's just when he gets in that mood, I'm like, can we be a little more self-aware? Can we just be a little more self-aware on how you're talking to your wife? Because if not, your wife's not going to be a happy person. And when you don't have a happy wife, what happens? So components of self-awareness. So there's a few different components of self-awareness, and they are things like emotional intelligence, recognizing and understanding your emotions and the emotions of others. So understanding your emotions and also understanding the emotions of others, that's emotional intelligence. So that's where that reading the room comes in. You got to read the room. Like if you're, you know, if you're pissed off, you still got to read the room to make sure you're not upsetting other people. Another one is self-esteem.
Yep. I want to share a real quick interaction I had with a patient about kind of feeding off each other and the self-awareness. We were trying on different frames. He'd already said he wanted to get more than one, possibly two. And so I was giving very direct feedback, and he's like, and I said, well, I like that one, but it kind of ages you. He's like, oh, it ages me? And he put it down immediately and moved on to the next one. And it was his tone of voice, I think, and his body language. And also I thought real quick, I'm like, how would I feel if someone I was working with just said something I liked aged me? And so what I did was I went and grabbed a frame off of the wall and put one on me. And I was like this one, when I put this one on, I look like Mrs. Claus. And it was just a different style of frame that didn't work well with my face. And I knew that. And so like my self-awareness helped me realize, I'm like, oh, that wasn't a very nice thing to say. Let me make fun of myself and show him that it's not particular to you, lovely young. And unfortunately, he wasn't a lovely young man. He was probably in his mid 50s. And it's funny because he chose to get, again, two frames, and he came back 2 weeks later to pick it up. And he's like, oh yeah, my wife liked that one. He's like, I know you said it aged me, but she really liked it. And I, at that point, I even said, I'm like, I'm so sorry I said that to you. I don't know what I was thinking that day. And he's like, you're right.
Hey, my age him, might make him feel it might make him look distinguished too, you know? That's what his wife might have said, which is another kind of way of saying ages you, makes you look distinguished. Nice way of saying it. Yeah. So no, and that is being able to understand other people's emotions. It's important. I think the opposite, though, has come to pass right now, where everyone wants everyone to pay attention to their emotions and their feelings, and not really, they don't always need to pay attention to other people. And I think that's we're very self-aware, but we're not emotionally intelligent any longer. We're very self-aware of what we feel and what we want, but we're not emotionally intelligent to see how what we're saying and what we're doing is affecting other people. And that's kind of sad right now. That's a big thing I see out there.
So how is it that you and I became self-aware? Because it sounds like this is something you and I both have. And I know I'm working on giving it to my kids, but where did we get it from? Is it a learned skill? Did we go to a class for it? Did we were just born with it? How can we help someone gain self-awareness?
Self-awareness, there's different things that you can do. Being that there's all the different components, there's a few more. There's self-esteem, self-assessment, which is also a way to help yourself. The way you can cultivate it, which is something that just one is mainly pay attention to people around you, how they work with you, how they react to you. Like You know, I used to work, and I know I've told you, Lisa, or told you, Sarah, about Lisa, the woman I used to work with, that she was just completely not self-aware. And what that does is it creates a lot of talking to people. The way that you're presenting yourself could be very in a way that's making people not want to be around you. That's one thing, is journaling. Another one is meditation. Meditation practices can help you connect with your inner self. A lot of it's being connected with you in here. What we put out represents what we have inside. So if you don't have that awareness of what you've got inside, you cannot portray for any amount of time. Like I can portray being happy when I'm not happy, but it's not going to last long. It's going to only last hopefully they're only around me for like 5 minutes, because that's about as much as you're getting out of me. So that's one thing you definitely want to do some journaling, some meditation, really get in touch with that inner self. Personal assessment. There's some like Myers and Briggs type indicators, so that can help you kind of figure out where you stand. Seeking feedback. So I know, Sarah, you and I always play off of each other, but we also are very tuned to each other. So therefore, we give each other feedback. Like I know when I've triggered you. I am very aware when something I says has triggered you and gotten you in a state, and I'm like, okay, let's see where that goes, because it shows. And I pay attention to your face, and I pay attention to you, and see how you're like the way you're looking at the camera, the different things. Just be aware of that and really pay attention to how people are around you, how they're working with you, and how they're looking at you. Let me see. And that's feedback. Also ask people. If you notice someone's being standoffish, ask them, is there something I've done? Is there something, the way I've presented something or the way I've said something that's upset you? Because guess what? People will be bluntly honest with you if you ask them most of the time. Maybe too honest. Some people might be able to tell, might not
Most
be
of
able
the
to
time.
For emotional intelligence, you want to develop your ability to recognize and manage your emotions and understand others' emotions. So that's what I mean. Like, I know, because when I coach you and stuff, I purposely trigger you in some ways because I want to get you to react to it so that we can work through that reaction. So I've been very careful on how, like, what triggers you and what doesn't. And if I notice your trigger, then I kind of push you just a little bit to kind of get you to talk a little bit more about it, but in a calmer way. It's just being emotional intelligence is all about being aware of your emotions and what you're portraying to others. So, and also their emotions on how they're reacting to you. We know about mindfulness, practice being present in the moment. And that's a big thing. That's what people are not. You got people on their cell phones. You got people thinking of 9,000 other things when they're dealing with people. And if you're in that moment, you're going to recognize a whole lot more than if you're on your cell phone or you're thinking of all the things you got to do when you get home. If you're thinking about all the overwhelming social media stuff that you have to do for your business, that is all stuff that is going to keep you from being present in the moment and mindful of what you're putting out there.
That actually just brought up something for me. So I can remember when I was still an optician working in the doctor's office, we were allowed to have our phones on us, but I never kept my phone on me. I took my little phone stand to work and I mounted my phone and I tucked it back by my monitor. And so then with 2 touches, I had the ability to check my son's blood sugar and make sure things were okay. Actually, that's not true. I couldn't even check his blood sugar by then, but I think it was just checking for messages. But something that she actually chose to compliment me on at my review in January was that I am very present with patients. And I was able to create that boundary to where when I'm sitting with a patient, that's the only person that I'm talking to. That's the only person that's there. I would often have a hard time wrapping it up and being done with that one patient I was sitting with, because I had more coming. The doctor was bringing me out another patient or a walk-in had happened. And so I really enjoy getting completely engulfed and present in the moment, because that moment is not stressful. That moment is good. That moment is lovely. That moment is about the person that I'm sitting with. And so being present in the moment is something that I really use a lot. And I try to really hold as something that works for me to ground myself, but I didn't always understand it. I went to an event in 2014 in Arizona. It was the Home Business Academy. Jimmy Davis was there, one of the speakers. And he kept talking about, I am so present to this moment. And I can remember making fun of him and like making a post on social media about what is this whole I'm so present to the moment. What does this mean? Is this a guru thing back when guru was a thing? And then now here I am years and years and years later. What this presenter was saying, what this $1 million earner was saying is that I'm here to be here. He's here to interact with us. He's here to be present. He's not here to do his speaking set and then go back to his hotel room. He was here. He's not drawn in 15 million different directions. And as moms, as entrepreneurs, as parents, that can take some setting up. So for me, that means having someone else in place to take care of my life so that I can work. And that's honestly probably why my career and being away from home completely fell apart, because there was no way that I could completely focus on work when they didn't pay me and I couldn't afford insulin for my child. There's no way that I can think about patients right now. I have to think about my own family. I can't be in the moment here with your people because my people aren't well.
No. And I used to joke around about mindfulness.
That's why we have crisis counseling though.
Exactly. But like I used to joke around, kind of like people talking about mindfulness, because it is a word that we've heard for years and it's like an overused word, right? So mindfulness, kind of like what I like to talk about is that awareness of the moment, just being there with your child, being there with me. It's being there with my clients. It's not necessarily, I will pat myself on the back and say I'm a really good massage therapist and I'm a really good coach. But I think even more than that, I can be present with my clients. When I've suffered not being able to, is when my daughter was going through that constant being suspended from school. That was hard for me because I felt like I couldn't be in two places at once. I couldn't be present with my phone in case I got a phone call and be present with my clients. And I can make anyone feel when they come into my office or they're on a screen with me, I can make you feel like you are the number one most important person in my life. And I care about what's going on with you. And that is what mindfulness is about, is that you're in that moment. And not to use the word, because I think it's an overused word, but it's you're in that moment. Your awareness is at that moment. Your awareness is right there. And what that does is that creates a connection with the person. And so then now you're more aware of their little movements that tell you when they're upset and when you're made them happy. You can tell everything if you're in the moment. If you're not in the moment, if you're 9,000 other places, you're not there. You can't be aware. You can't be self-aware, and you cannot be aware of what you're saying or doing is affecting other people. So part of the thing is that when we are having problems achieving our goals and we're having problems within our relationship, both personal and business wise, a lot of that is going to be that self-awareness, that lack of self-awareness. If you have a hard time taking criticism, it's because you don't want to admit to your faults. I'll admit to most of my faults, and is that I'm blunt, and people don't always like that. But that's part of not being self-aware. If you can't take criticism and you can't acknowledge that you might have done something wrong, that is a lack of self-awareness, because that's someone giving you feedback. You got to acknowledge it. So basically, self-awareness is a powerful tool for us to use for personal and professional growth by understanding ourselves better. It's all about understanding yourselves and how you can affect other people and how you are affecting other people and make better decisions and overcome your challenges. So self-awareness has an effect on all that part of your life that you're having struggles with right now.
And I thought I was so self-aware.
It's not the only thing. Like we've talked about other problems. It's not the only thing, but it is something. Even me, I consider myself pretty self-aware, but I struggle with some of those other things. And so sometimes I'm like, okay, why is it that? And it could be, I'm just not aware of that part of me. I'm very aware as a coach and as a massage therapist, but maybe you can be self-aware in some aspects and not self-aware in other aspects. And maybe those are the aspects or I already know, like I told you earlier, I already know what I do wrong or I don't do, and I just don't do them. I'm very aware.
I want to say that I really appreciate our relationship so that I feel safe enough to call it to your attention when I feel like you've slipped out of self-awareness, because I do think there's two areas in your life where you struggle with the self-awareness because it's such an emotionally raw place. And I think I said it to you earlier. And I just think it's really awesome. Like, I don't know if it makes sense, but how grateful I am that I can be close enough with someone to say something that feels very scary, because please love me after I say this because I love you and I'm saying it because I love you because I'd like there to be a good outcome and not an outcome that says, oh, we're going to end this meeting because XYZ, or we're just not going to. It made me all emotional because that's what I feel like I have with you. I have someone who I trust enough to speak about or dissect parts of my life that I'm asking for. Please help me.
Well, and that goes back to the, like, I know that there's parts of my life that I'm not like, we're not 100%. I'm not perfect. I'm human. So I'm willing to take criticism. That alone to me shows a lot of self-awareness because I'm willing to take criticism. I'm willing to listen to you, and I will. Sometimes I'll get frustrated, but I always hear you. And I might get frustrated in the moment, like, you don't understand, because I felt myself do that before. You don't understand what I'm going through. And then later I'll go back and I'll think about what you said. And I'll be like, okay, she was right here. That yes, I need to change this. So even if I don't hear you in that moment, I still do hear you. And so that's a part of me that there's a lot of passion. There's a lot of, when I get frustrated, sometimes I don't, but I do hear you. And so always understand, like, I hear people who can have criticism for me. I just might not be able to take it at that moment, but I hear you and I store it and I do look at it later.
Do you remember when I was full-time at TVC and we would talk on the phone either while I was driving home or once I would get home, and I would start to catch my communication and I'll be like, I'm sorry, I meant this. Do you know that I meant this? Or I'm like, okay, well, I'm not trying to be rude when I say, or I'm like, and you're like, Sarah, stop it. Sarah, friggin' stop it. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, you don't have to be so careful when you're talking to me. I'm not going to get offended. And it helped me realize, and you pointed it out to me over and over and over again, what a toxic work environment I was in, because the space I was in, I was constantly being misunderstood and then having it used against me instead of being allowed the space to learn, because that's what happens when you're learning something new. There's a lot of misunderstandings. Oh, I thought I did it this way. Nope, you're supposed to do it that way. Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing it with me. And instead I was getting things with, like, so I tried to do this and it don't go well. And they're like, well, are you stupid? Because we showed you how to do that yesterday. I'm like, no, I'm not stupid. Or the first time I went to use a pupilometer and I walked over to my boss and said, Kristen, can you show me how to do this? She's like, oh, you know how to do that already. I'm like, actually, no, I don't. I'd never been shown how to use this piece of equipment. And her response in front of a patient was to laugh at me and say, oh, you already know how to do that. And I'm just like,
yeah, no. And with me in the moment, if I'm
and then
already,
when I ask again, I'm arguing and insubordinate.
yeah, no. Well, I told you what Lisa said to me once, right? She said, and this is complete lack of awareness, just an idea of what lack of awareness can do. She literally, we were talking and she looked over at me. She goes, you're very manipulative. And I looked at her, I said, are you a moron? Because I'm like the least manipulative person. I flat out tell you what I think. I flat out tell you what if I'm wrong, I'll tell you I'm wrong. If I'm right, I might rub it in a little bit, especially if you argued with me for a while. But I'm like the least manipulative
But this
person.
is why you struggle with marketing.
I know. I am like the least
That's why you struggle with marketing, because marketing is manipulation.
Yeah, I am not manipulative. I am one of those people that, like, I just tell you the way it is, to tell you what. And so, like, but she loved to try to manipulate every situation to make herself be in a better place or look better. So that is complete lack of self-awareness right there. She's calling someone else manipulative, who is probably the most upfront, honest person that she could deal with. I mean, I told her everything I was doing to build my massage business. She didn't want to do it. So then I built mine and she got mad and she's like, you're so manipulative. I'm like, I told you what to do. You didn't do it. What do you want me to do about that?
Well, and that's when, like, now that you're the person you are now, I hope you would have, like, leaned into it and be like, I am manipulative. Look at all these people coming to my business. I manipulated them right through my front door. The reason I'm playing with that word manipulation is because when I got started in digital marketing, I really struggled with it. I'm like, wait a minute, we're trying to influence people's ways of thinking. And so I went to enough events where they're like, everything is influencing your way of thinking. Everything is influencing it. From the TV you watch to the clothes you wear, from the drinks you drink, everything is influencing. And so it took me a bit to be okay with being manipulative.
See, I
love that we're talking on this because I've gotten all in my feels and now I'm all sweaty, but I was like, it's okay sometimes.
But I don't think, like, advertising, like, there's manipulative and then there's manipulative. I know they're the same word, but there's like the manipulative, like you're trying to actually hurt others and you're trying to create problems, or you're just trying to make yourself look better.
Right.
And then there's the manipulative, like with massage, in all reality, I'm not.
Right.
I say, look, massage is really good. It helps you out. It actually makes you be able to move better. It makes you be able to, and that's not manipulating. It is in the advertising sense, because I'm making people think about something they probably would not have thought about previously, but it's not in the manipulative the way she meant it. And I am not that manipulative. I might be willing to help you.
Right.
And I might be willing to like make you think about something that you might not have thought about before, but I am not going to manipulate you into doing something bad or making me look better. That's
You
not
don't
who
want
I
to
am.
do.
No.
I think this is a great time to kind of talk about how each of these things can actually be positive and negative. Because like
Yes.
it's the same thing with self-awareness. If all you are self-aware, if you have not gone the next step to be aware of your impact on others, then you've missed the point. We're not trying to say that, just being one way is the way to be. These are all tools. These are all things to get strong on. Actually, Megan, you touched on a couple of different topics. Emotional intelligence. Oh, but there's one I want to throw out there because I want us to do podcasts on these later. I've caught that you use a lot of depreciating language about yourself. And I probably do it too. But like when I hear you do it about yourself, I get all tinky. I want to be like, don't talk about my friend like that. Megan's awesome. Stop it. It's funny because I was like, I know I do this myself. I know she's heard me talk about, I'm not even a good coach, or I'm this or I'm that. And so it's so funny to me. And oh my God, I'm getting emotional. Can my period just happen and I get over this? But I love that we work together like this and we call each other out, because we can go too far into one direction and then we're not seeing the success we want. We can go too far into the action and be exhausting ourselves. So like it is really all about balance and growth. And I love the title to this podcast, Grit and Grow. Megan, what does grit mean to you?
Just being able to get through, many people are going through things right now, and I've been through a lot of things, and a lot of them, and just being able to grit down and say, I'm gonna get through this. I'm gonna find a way through this. I'm going to grow with this. I'm going to change. One thing I was always told was that each thing that happens in your life has a lesson, and like I can't hold anger towards people that I've learned from. And I had a very abusive relationship when I was younger, but it taught me how to be strong. It taught me who I was going to be and who I was not going to allow anyone to do, what I was not going to allow anyone to do to me again. So I grew from that. So I don't hate the guy. I mean, I've actually spoken to him multiple times because I don't feel like that. I feel like by learning, he taught me something I needed to know. So grit and grow to me means learning from things, moving forward, gritting down and saying, I'm going to get through this no matter what. I will find a solution. I will find a way, and I will grow from this whole situation. What about you, Miss Sarah?
Yeah, I love it. I love it a lot. It connects me back to, well, that's why I'm glad that you used the words you used, because as you know, I launched my business despite the storm. And to me, it means success no matter what. It's getting through it. It's figuring it out. We're going to show up. We're going to do the do no matter what. And for me, that has always been parenting. I started parenting at 16 years old, and no matter what, I'm going to parent. And I'm excited for this podcast and the growth that we're going to have as we start to close out this year. I can't believe it, but September is just around the corner, because I'm ready for a new era. It's hard to put words to a little bit, but like we focused on our kids and taking care of our kids and taking care of everybody else. But like, what happens if instead of getting through it no matter what if we start to prioritize happiness, kindness, contentment, enjoyment, joy, pleasure?
Well, and
You know
that's
what I
part
mean?
of the whole
Like,
growth
what if we
part.
lean into that instead of feeling like we're trudging? Yeah.
Well, in a lot of ways, like we all go through things, and then there's the other side, and then there's that time period in our lives that we're in that place of happiness, of contentment and stuff. And then something else comes up, like before I got hit by the car, I was very happy. I had my business had just expanded. I had the best month of my life. I was happy as anything. I was content. My husband and I were getting along great. Everything was going well. And then I got hit by a car. So do I give up at that point? Now, granted, I did yell out after being hit by the car that I was going to lose everything, but that was a trauma reaction and I got over it. But like, do I give up at that point, or do I grit down and I say, let me move forward? And what can I learn from this? I can learn how strong I am. I can learn how I will find a way if I need to. There is a way. And I did. So that's the grit part. And then the growth part is enjoying that time period that you don't have. I think we lost her again.
Back yet, or back yet, or back yet.
Okay, I think we just lost Miss Sarah, but speaking of things that we need to do, I need to get my daughter. So I'm gonna end this podcast right now, and we're gonna continue this, Miss Sarah. We're gonna continue talking about grit and grow in general, and then also self-awareness and all that stuff on our next podcast. And it's just, there's so much to self-awareness, there's so much to emotional intelligence that there's nothing you can do. You can't just, we got more that we need to talk about. So we will talk again soon, and we'll finish we'll finish on a second podcast. To be continued. I'm going to put that across the screen. To be continued.
Love it.
Okay.
Go
Bye,
get your
everyone.
girl.
Bye, everyone. We'll see you guys again. Thank you for joining us on Grit and Grow with Megan and Sarah.
I'm living for the